Yo, yo, what's good? Hey, your boy back with a part two. You know what I'm saying? Remember last week I did the part one of, excuse me. I did the part one of ETFs versus index funds versus mutual funds. And about a couple of minutes into that video, I figured I'm gonna have to come back with another one, man, because while I was doing that, I kept thinking of stuff to add on to it. So just a little quick recap. ETFs acronym stands for Exchange Traded Fund. Index funds are pretty much they're pretty much the same as an ETF, but not quite as liquid. You can't buy or sell it. Well, you can buy and sell it, but you won't see the transaction updated or reflected in your brokerage account until after the market closes. I'm not sure why that is. And then, you got your mutual funds. Like I said in the first video, they're the OGs. They've been around the longest. It's probably more mutual funds out there than ETFs and index funds, but that might change soon. And with mutual funds, a lot of people, at least with a lot of younger people, the younger generations are shying away from mutual funds because they're more expensive. They're actively managed, and the people overseeing the operations and the performance of these funds, they got to get paid, man. They're not volunteering. So picking stocks is a lot of work. If you pick stocks, you know it. It takes a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of analyzing just financial statements and just all types of documents. So the fund managers of mutual funds, they take all that work and do it for you. So freeing up your time to go do something, that's not draining. Because picking stocks, researching stocks it's a tedious job, man. Like I said, I've done it while I was like getting my feet wet, and it's a lot of work. I'm a fund man. I can see myself changing, like making that my YouTube name, the fund man. I love investing in ETFs. They the best thing since sliced bread, man. I'm telling you. I'm glad whoever came out with ETFs. Oh man, I hope I see them in heaven. But anyway, this is gonna be a little quick little run through, just to discern a little bit further, to help you discern the difference between the three. I'm quite sure there's people out there who, they prefer mutual funds, even younger people who may prefer mutual funds over index funds and ETFs. So I'll start with index funds. I didn't mention this in the first video. So index funds was created by a guy named Jack Bogle, also known as John Bogle. And if you ever heard of the brokerage Vanguard, he is the one who founded Vanguard. I like John Bogle, man. He was looking out for the general public when he came out with index funds. That was his idea, because he was like, mutual funds. His whole aim was to make getting in the market, to make investing in the stock market easier for the average person like you and me. And I thank God for that dude, man. He's no longer alive, but his impact, it's still felt today because a gazillion people invest in index funds. They're super cheap. A lot of times you'll see the expense ratios, they're under 0.1%. I've never seen an index fund with an expense ratio over 0.1% or even at 0.1%. I usually see them like 0.02% to maybe 0.05%. Out of the three funds, ETFs, mutual funds, index funds are usually the cheapest. They're pretty much free. And so that's why it's kind of annoying to hear people major on the minors, like, oh, watch out for the expense ratios. When the expense ratios are that low, man, the fund is it's free. It's free. Like, don't try to be technical, man, because a 0.05% 0.08% expense ratio. Let's say if you got $10,000 invested in this stock. I want a 0.05% expense ratio. I don't know what that is. $50, I think. Think about that. $10,000, you only paying $50 to hold this fund. You spend that every week. What, cable, streaming services? So that's why I making that the topic of focus is kind of a waste of time, because that amount is negligible, it's trivial. Another thing about index funds is that they were a spinoff of mutual funds, which was one of the driving reasons John Bogle came out with index funds. He didn't like the fact that mutual funds were that expensive. So all he did was he looked at the mutual funds and he said, how can I make this affordable? How can I make holding one of these super cheap? What he did was he took the mutual fund, he took away the active management, and when you take away the active management, by default, you lower the expense ratio because the fund manages itself. Why? Because it tracks an index, hence index fund. Hey, you can't beat index funds. I mean, for the most part, you can't beat it. They're I want to say another thing about index funds, the way to identify them, and I noticed that this is true of only index funds and mutual funds. The ticker symbol is usually indicated by 5 letters. So you'll have like Fidelity, for instance. I'm a Fidelity guy, so I know some of their funds. They have an index fund that tracks the NASDAQ stock exchange. It's the NASDAQ composite fund, and its ticker symbol is FNCMX. FNCMX tracks the NASDAQ composite or the NASDAQ stock market. It holds, I want to say a little over 2,800 stocks. And the same with a mutual fund. Another one of the Fidelity's more popular mutual funds, the Magellan Fund, and that is FMAGX. Both funds are identified by 5 letters. Their ticker symbols consist of 5 letters. ETFs, you would never see an ETF with 5 letters in it. So with ETFs, their ticker symbol ranges from 3 to 4 letters. So like I said last week, one of the funds, the ETFs I hold in my taxable account at Fidelity is a large cap growth fund that is issued by Charles Schwab, another popular brokerage. I love Schwab. They got some very good ETFs. They don't have a lot of ETFs like iShares, who is managed by BlackRock, but the ETFs they do have, they're nice. I like Schwab. And the ticker symbol for the large cap growth ETF I just mentioned is SCHG. But you also have ETFs with 3-letter ticker symbols like Vanguard's popular S&P 500 ETF, which is VOO. So those the ticker symbols can help you differentiate between an index fund and an ETF, or an index and mutual fund versus an ETF. Let's see what else I wanted to talk about. For although I may, and other people like myself may have their own preferences of which fund category they like the best, you may like mutual funds better than index funds and ETFs. Like I said, you got some brilliant fund managers who oversee mutual funds. These guys are like that, and they have track records that consistently outperform the market. For instance, you have one of the more legendary investors, probably as it relates to just the stock market. He is probably the greatest investor ever to ever do it, and that's Peter Lynch. So he oversaw the mutual fund I mentioned earlier, FMAGX, ticker symbol FMAGX, the Fidelity Magellan Fund. I want to say about 13, 14 years back in the probably the late 70s and 80s, or the mid 70s throughout the 80s. He was the chief manager. He was the head manager over this fund. And throughout his tenure of managing that fund, he beat the market. I think every year, beat the market and grew it massively. So in that situation, which is not often, it's not often that a fund manager is doing that. Whoever invested their money into that fund during his time there while that fund was under his leadership, they probably got rich. If they invested enough money or a lot of money, that money just blossomed under his direction. But that's not often. So when you got a guy who's that good, the expense ratio, I wouldn't sweat it too much, because the return on investment is gonna just make the expense ratio negligible. So I don't think there's a perfect fund per se, but mutual funds, they definitely have their place. But yeah, man, that was the quick recap. That was the part 2. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to do that before it slipped my mind. So I got to start posting more often, man. I'm trying to get on here consistently, post, make a video every day, and just give you my take, my analysis on what's going on in the market. Like right now, it looks like we are trending towards a crash or recession. That's the word on the Wall Street. But I'm gonna make another video about that, man. I got some stuff brewing, you know what I'm saying, I want to share, and I think it may help some people. I ain't an expert, you know what I'm saying, but I am passionate about investing, man. It's something that I wish I would have learned back in my early 20s when I was in college. I went to college. I graduated high school 2011. And I went to college. I turned 19 a few months after I had went off to college. I was getting all this financial aid, these Pell Grants, just all this money. And I wasted all that money. I came from an environment where personal finance was never talked about. We were consumers in every sense of the word. I was trained to be I've always been frugal, but there's no point in being frugal if you don't invest the money, if you don't know what to do with the money. So I'm no better off than the person who's loose with their money. But now that I'm learning these things and have learned, a good amount of stuff about investing in personal finance, my mission is to teach my children, man, so they never have to work for money. We were not created to work for money. We were created to work to make a difference. Now, money may come as a byproduct of that, but we were not created to work for a paycheck. It comes with a host of negative consequences, man. Just acceleration in aging, body wearing down long before it's supposed to, deteriorating health at very fast levels, very fast rates. But that's a whole nother video, man. Let me go ahead and shake before this video get too long. Now, I appreciate y'all for watching. Anybody who subscribes, I'm calling it. I'm getting them subscribers up. And let's build this wealth together, man, so we can make a difference in this world and live life on our own terms. So that's my prayer for y'all, everybody who's watching it. And I'm going to be praying for y'all, man. Anybody who see this video, anybody who subscribe, got somebody praying for you. I am a believer. Boy, living for Jesus out here. Just had to throw that little tidbit in there. But y'all have a good one. Peace.